Hello and welcome to the first voice commentated mobile SC guide. So this is the Tower of Double Trouble guide. How it'll work, I'll just play the completion and then voiceover with any tips I find helpful for doing jumps. Feel free to skip to whatever part of the video you want. So this tower is split up into 3 sides. A side is the hardest, and then B side and C side are probably about the same difficulty. C side's maybe a bit harder, but starting off the tower, just some basic wraps. Shouldn't take you that long to learn. Just make sure to flick in on all of these and be careful not to walk off the edge. And also don't rush these too much. Take your time. Rushing them can make loop failing 1 to 5 a lot worse. You can high jump up there if you want to skip these jumps. Up here, this is probably the first hard jump of the tower. Just make sure you're going cleanly through the gap. If you bump into the walls too much, you might lose enough speed to not make that jump. Some more pretty simple wraps. If you need to practice them, go ahead. I mean, it is still floor 1, but nothing wrong with trying to build consistency in the practice place. These stickouts are a bit harder, but just make sure you're not bumping into the wall. They're not too tight. This kill brick part should not be a problem. I was pretty slow on here and I barely took any damage. Another simple wrap. This stickout is, again, you need to take it a bit wide just to make sure you don't bump into the wall because it's not that precise. Try and go forward facing into these so that if you do bonk into the top wall, you can still climb up it and save yourself. You can either long jump there or just jump around to these and do a slightly smaller long jump here. I'd recommend going around to this far side just so you don't bonk your head on the tightrope. And then go from 45 degrees to 45 degrees the other way. So you're facing backwards, and that's the safest way to do those tightrope wraps. These wraps are a bit harder, so take them a bit tighter. This wrap, make sure you angle yourself around the corner so you don't bump into the first wall. These just wiggle yourself down the slope, be careful not to walk off, and then do them from the bottom of the slope. They're not that difficult. Slightly harder stickouts here. Just make sure you're taking a second to line them all up, and you should be fine. Here, just walk into the edge of the wall. You don't really need to worry about the gaps because they're so small. Some basic editors. Flick out a bit on these stickouts. Flick out a bit here, and then flick inwards. I actually did that pretty poorly. I should have failed there. Just climb to the top of these, and then try and aim for the bottom of the next platform. Pretty self-explanatory. This stickout is pretty difficult. Just make sure you're flicking inwards at the end and taking a second to align. Aligning on all these jumps, even if it slows you down a bit, is worth it. Reset efficiency just does not overcome just the greater consistency you get from setting up these jumps. That jump can be pretty hard, so I'd recommend practicing it, especially if this is your first SC. You can high jump up there, or you can just do the stickout like this. This is probably the hardest jump on 1 to 5. So take a second. I didn't set it up for long enough. Again, another hard stick out. Tip yourself out a bit to make sure that you're clearing the wall with some momentum. And welcome to floor 4. Tends to wrap. Take a second to align. This is another pretty precise wrap. Just always take a second to align and practice most of these jumps. Just like going through it once in an all jump can help you get a feel for it. You can either flick or jump around this truss. Just jump off to there. Make sure to look where you're going on these, just so you're actually landing on the platforms and not overshooting or undershooting. Jump from the back side of there rather than going to the very front, just because it's a bit easier. Some not super difficult stickouts, just make sure you're taking your time. Take a second in between every wrap, especially if you're on mobile. Alright, this is a bit harder, so flick out and then Well, practice should get you the muscle memory. Just do this like a long jump and climb on the ladder. Make sure you're going all the way down on all of these. You can wiggle your camera in order to slowly slide down it. Ignore the gaps on these, you're not going to fall into them, unless you do something really wrong. That jump's deceptively hard, so just make sure you flick in 45 degrees at the end. Do these however you prefer to do long jumps. The step out is a 3x2, so just flick your camera outwards a bit before going. Same thing with the next jump. I'd recommend shift flicking there, although you could just turn normally. On these walkarounds, you can climb onto the platform, so you could do them like a normal walkaround, or you can aim to climb. That is not a walkaround, so make sure you don't do that like one, because you're gonna fail. You can see you can climb, and those really aren't that bad. Jump out, jump a bit late, make sure you don't hit your head there. Again, on this tightrope wrap, 45 degrees to 45 degrees the other way. It's gonna be your best friend throughout all of TODT. On PC, there's probably other strategies, but I don't know them. You can just do these forward facing. If you stand on them forever, they can get messed up, but the swing really should not be a problem. Just do these like wraps, take it a bit wide so you don't bonk your head. Do this one on the left side, just to make sure that you don't accidentally walk into the wall and mess up. I'd say just normally flick off that. You could shift flick if you wanted to. Same thing for this. Angle yourself out 45 degrees before going on that, and on those half studs, just try and angle yourself on 45 degrees at all times to prevent yourself from getting bounced off. That ball jump is really not that bad. You don't need any sort of setup. It jumps pretty easy. Just flick, aim to land back on the ladder. Again, set yourself up 45 degrees. It will help you get around the wall better and keep a bit more momentum, which will make those longer jumps easier. Again, you can see kind of flick out before you go to get yourself a bit away from the wall. That jump's a bit difficult. I'd recommend practicing the end of 6 because this is basically the last failable part of the tower. Because after 6, it is very well netted. Just walk along the edge of the wall on that tightrope. Make sure you don't walk off the edge there because there is a full stud gap. You can do that on the right or left side. Left side might actually be a bit easier because you don't risk walking into the wall. Just make sure you're going all the way around the corner. If you bonk into the corner, it's very easy to mess up a lot of these jumps. So that's why you always want to angle yourself outward like 45 degrees like that. Then this jump's left-sided. If you struggle with left-sided wraps, definitely practice that a bit. Make sure you don't bonk your head here. That would be a dumb way to fail. And welcome to 7. This timer is really lenient, so you don't need to worry a ton about it. Be careful not to fall off the tightrope. I went sideways there. I'd say just go 45 degrees. Some more pretty simple wraps. I'd say just flick around this. You could walk around it if you're comfortable with that, but flicking is generally just more consistent. Ladders can be very buggy. Just jump to the higher part there. Don't worry about the lower part. You can high jump and skip that one jump. Another simple wrap. On this last stick out, flick away from the wall a bit and then do it. This jump, you have to go right-sided. On all of these jumps, just make sure you're jumping late enough because they are pretty far. Pretty easy wrap. Make sure you're around the corner before trying that wrap. Otherwise, you can like bonk on it weirdly and miss the jump. Again, just set yourself up 45 degrees for all those like wall-based stick-outs. Just makes it easier. And then flick out for all the stick-outs that don't have a wall. .45 degrees, and then you can rotate forward like that, or you can try and go backwards 45 degrees. It's just up to your personal preference. Again, I'd recommend just practicing these parts just so you know what strategies work best for you. This timer is again really lenient, so don't worry a ton about going super fast. You'll see I have like 20 seconds left over and I'm not really speedrunning this at all, so really just take your time to align. Honestly, ignoring the timer is probably the best strategy here. These wraps aren't super difficult. That's probably the hardest one, and it's not that bad. Just make sure you're not walking off. All these jumps, you can take it a little bit wide. That jump's not that bad. Just make sure you don't bonk into the top platform and miss the bottom one. This is probably one of the hardest wraps on 10. Just make sure you wrap it correctly. On this, get on the very edge. Try and turn very smoothly. And be ready to save because sometimes spheres can be weird, especially on mobile. Another pretty hard tightrope wrap, just go 45 to 45. That's the best strategy. This button section is extremely lenient. You can see I forgot where to go, and I still have 5 seconds left. These wraps are pretty difficult. I'd recommend practicing, but again, it's just the same thing. Just make sure you set it up correctly. Flick or just jump around that truss to get to the other side. A pretty basic ladder flick. Just make sure you're going straight onto the ladder, otherwise you can fall off. Make sure you go straight onto that half stud and try and avoid turning too much, otherwise you can bounce off it. That's probably the hardest jump of the tower right there. Just be really careful on that sphere. It's easy to sink down into it and miss the jump. Be ready, you're going to bonk your head on that, but just carefully go to the truss. Flick up these. I'd recommend shift flicking this last one. It's up to personal preference though. Make sure you make it inside the gap and then go backwards there. Make sure you twist all the way inwards so you don't miss the jump. Set this up like a long jump. Set this up like a long jump. Then don't go onto the front side of the truss. You want to go from the side to the side. So make sure you're on the edge of the side. And then don't worry too much about bonking your head. And don't worry too much about saving. If you focus too much on saving on the trusses below on those wraps, it's very easy to mess them up. And then just be careful, 45 degrees on that tightrope, and welcome to B-side. You've essentially made it through the tower. From here on out, it's mainly netted, so just gotta get through the next few parts, and make sure you don't die to KB. Take a second to heal if you need to. Healing items can be very useful. Get this button. You can jump down here if you like this wrap more, or you can just do the wrap above. Some more basic wraps. And this is really, really lenient timers. Again, all of the timers in this tower you don't really need to worry about. Long jump, and welcome to 7B, or no, 9B. Alright. This one has button progress, but it saves even if you fall into the KB, so just don't worry. You'll make it through eventually. You can high jump up to this top button there and skip one of the buttons, and I don't believe it skips a key checkpoint, so if you want to do that, go ahead. Otherwise, you're going to go down here, do pretty basic gameplay. These wraps, just take a second, look where you're going. It can be a bit weird because of the neon coloring, but again, if you fall, you just get teleported back up one floor and you don't lose any progress. Same thing on that wrap. It can be a bit weird to see. Make sure you don't drop down and hit the other button, otherwise you will lose a bit of progress. I don't know what I'm doing. Alright. Go through this neon. You can go aim to climb that or just do it like a normal long jump. Go over here. Again, make sure you don't hit the button. Be really careful on this jump. Don't hit the button, otherwise you will lose a bit of progress, which would be very sad. Go around here. That wrap's not too difficult. Just take it wide and make sure you're turning in all the way. Now, you're going to jump down here and backtrack a bit. A lot of just backtracking on this part, but once you get this last button, just make sure you don't hit any of the other buttons and your progress will save. Set this up like a long jump. Pretty basic wrap. And now you are on 8B. This is the last of like the teleport back to 10B floors. There's a kill brick wall here. Just be careful. Just wait for the wall. I mean, I know it's very tempting to rush, especially if you've been on 9 and 10B for a while, but just take your time. Watch out for the KB wall, and if you ever see your health drop below like half, just jump into the KB below. Just make sure you don't die. As long as you don't die, then you're pretty much guaranteed to beat the tower. So you can see I'm taking my time on the one studs. It's also much easier to do the jumps when the KB wall is not blocking your vision. That left-sided wrap is a bit more difficult. You could practice it if you want. Just wait for the KB to pass when you're on the tightrope. Heal here. In that corner right there, it's netted. Heal there until you're basically up to full. And then you're going to go into the dropper, and the dropper can be very, very easily cheesed. So if you have healing items, I'd recommend using them here. But you're just going to walk around the edge. Be careful, try not to take a ton of damage, and just stand right here. And if you stand perfectly still here, you won't take any damage. So nice and easy strategy to just completely cheese the dropper. I mean, you could do it legit if you wanted, but I don't think the creator ever intended this to be done without healing items. Alright, and now this last floor, 6B, is netted. Or 7? I don't know. Okay. Yeah. No, this is 6. Dropper was 7. So go over there, get that button. Again, super lenient timers. Don't worry a ton about the time. Another tightrope wrap, just 45 to 45. It's the best strategy. You can take it a bit wide, and that might make it easier because of how the tightropes are sloped. There's a nice little skip here on the C side if you want to do it, but it doesn't really matter. And welcome to the final side of the tower. It's a bit harder than B side. It's less, there's no nets, but it's not that bad. And 9 and 10C are probably the hardest floors of the tower. So just be prepared for those. I'd recommend practicing them a bit, just so you don't get stuck here forever. Set that up like a long jump, pretty basic wrap. Flick out a bit before doing that, pretty standard. Just flick those, some long jumps. This wrap is pretty difficult. I'd say practice that, and then just make sure you're not taking it too tight, because then you'll undershoot the platform. On here, you can bounce all 3 ways. It's up to personal preference. Some more pretty basic jumps. Do a head hitter there. Go across these. Go on the outside of this. And just trust flicks. If you struggle with those, then make sure to practice. Pretty basic 1 studs. Head hitter there. Make sure to jump late there. It's a bit far. This is another tightrope wrap. Make sure you're going a bit back on the tightrope just so you're not bonking into the wall. Just set up all these jumps, make sure you're jumping late, take them tight but not too tight. Here, jump out and hit that to make it disappear, then jump on that. The timing is a little bit precise, but you should get the hang of it if you just practice it for like a minute. The timing on these, they take forever to disappear, so just take your time, align everything. You can jump to the final platform there if you don't like this end part. Otherwise, just go on those half studs. And welcome to 9C. So this is dark, so just really make sure you're aligning and looking where you're going. This is a ladder. I'd say just flick around it, shift flick off it, and then walk on these tightropes 45 degrees, unshift lock, jump, and then re-shift lock in midair to go back on that 45-degree angle. Pretty basic wrap. Pretty basic wrap. Another pretty basic wrap. Make sure not to bonk your head on these, and if you do, be prepared to react to make sure you land on the platform. Some head hitters, don't die here, just be careful if you get super low for whatever reason. Take a second, heal, use your items. These are ladders. I'd say just normal flick them. Shift flicking can be a bit weird on cylinders. Another pretty easy long jump, just walk across this tightrope. Flick inwards at the end of that jump, walk across this tightrope. Long jump, another long jump, another long jump. Set this one up like you're gonna climb on it, and welcome to the final floor of the tower. Alright, you can just climb all the way up that, no need to flick. Flick off this and aim to climb that. Just jump forward facing. I'd say go off like the diagonal corner of the truss there. Another pretty simple ladder flick. Just jump late and make sure you don't fail. Take a second to align on all these. These are some of the hardest raw diff jumps of the tower. Be careful not to die there. Just take a second to heal if you need it. Flick around that cylinder of ladders. This is a 10 to jump, and this is, again, one of the hardest jumps. Flick outward a bit, and then go for the jump. Take a second to align here, but don't let your nerves get the best of you. It's just a 10 to jump. You got it. And if you beat it, congratulations on what's likely your first insane. I definitely recommend this as a first insane. It's, well, the easiest insane for starters, and it also has significantly better gameplay when compared to towers like Tower of Difficulty Chart and Tower of thinning layers. And as the message says, good luck with any other towers in the future. Yeah, that's all. Bye.